On today's episode of the Sales Factor podcast, we have none other than Che Clarkson, who is the head of sales for a company called Hubble. He's been in sales for over 10 years. He's currently leading a sales team right now in B2B, go-to-market strategy, sales management, you name it, he's been doing it. And really, he talks about how to provide the right value to their customers. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Che,
Hey, how's it going,
what
Aaron?
Oh, good, mate. Oh, good. Couldn't be better. But what's the biggest challenge in sales that you're finding right now?
Mm, um, Good question. For me, two main things spring to mind. Firstly, sales cycles becoming a lot longer. Um, and the second is kind of price sensitivity for customers.
Hmm.
Those are our
Yeah.
bugbears at the moment.
Can't get away from price sensitivity or sales cycle. So, well, what do you mean sales cycle taking longer than ever? Like, give us a bit of context around that.
Yeah, I mean, look, to take it really far back, if you look at like old wide boy sales, right? 20, 30 years
Mm.
ago. It was all about get the deal done, get it done quickly. And
Mm.
sales was almost like a bit of a taboo industry. But because buyers have kind of become aware of that and smart to that, sellers have had to become more consultative. And that's just naturally elongated sales processes. You then look at the current macroeconomic climate, and this is kind of where the price sensitivity element comes in. Businesses are more afraid of spending money, especially on software, especially if it's something they don't need. It's a nice to have.
Mm.
So all of a sudden, more and more stakeholders are involved in the decision making process because that way, if it goes wrong, everybody's to blame. You know, if you're the one
Yeah.
person, if you're the champion that's like, yeah, you know what, my team needs this, let's do it, and it goes wrong, all of a sudden that's spend on your head. So yeah, I think that's why they're becoming longer. People are just a bit more scared to buy, and also they just want to make sure that they're making the right decision.
Yeah, I get that. I think it's an interesting one because in the current economics and stuff of we're in a bit of a down market. People say I truly believe it's more just leveled out a little bit where it sales is hard, right? It's not for everybody. It is hard. It's just I think it's about doing the basics, doing them well, and just keep doing it, and the deals will come. And I do get what you're saying about, 20, 30 years ago. Not that I've been in sales 20, 30 years. I wish I would have, probably have gray hair, but yeah, sales cycles are obviously getting a bit longer. So how long's your sales cycle now?
So now we're at 3 months, which look, I
Okay.
understand. For most, that's not long, but I think you got to look at it as like a percentage, right? So pre-COVID, our sales cycle was usually like 4 to 6 weeks. So
Oh,
that's double the length of time, which even though it's not huge for us as a
mm,
percentage, it becomes quite significant.
yeah. Yeah, because then it's if you look at the ROI across the year, like if you're closing deals out within every 4 weeks or every 6 weeks, it's almost doubling the ROI,
Mm.
which obviously businesses need more money in the business now more than ever,
Yeah.
and sales need to be happening. So why is it such a big challenge to go from 4 to 6 weeks to 3 months? Like, are you finding your team is struggling with it, and you struggle as a loose term, but you finding they're adjusting to a longer sales cycle is affecting performance, or
Um,
like why is it such a big challenge?
yeah, I think there's a couple of factors. The first one is adding value. When you're used to a certain length of sales cycle, you can set up like a mutual action plan of this this happens 1 week, this happens the next week. We provide this case study, then we provide this bit of research then, and you have almost like a very repeatable process that takes you step by step to when you'd expect a deal to close, right?
Right.
All of a sudden, when that deal cycle is doubled, you have to find ways of adding value, keeping that deal alive
Mm,
that you previously didn't have to. So that's one aspect. And the second aspect is the stakeholder part, right? It's becoming longer because there's more people involved. Have we sold to that persona within that business before? Do we understand the pain points or how they're involved in the buying process? And in some scenarios, we're not. So we're almost teaching ourselves how to re-qualify deals whilst they're happening. So you kind of go back into a bit of a ramping stage almost, and
mm.
that's what we've kind of struggled with, and that's what we've had to overcome, shall I say?
Yeah. I can see how like adding value to the sales cycle for sure, right? We all know as salespeople, we gotta, not necessarily just show a value prop or show, what we've done or how people's done it, but if there's multiple people, it's making sure everyone's seeing the value throughout. Because, I guess if there is multiple stakeholders that make that decision, you could have say 4 out of the 5 really wanting it, but that fifth one says no, and that can be a massive blocker if they don't see the value. So
Mm.
h- how do you provide value? Say there's a multiple stakeholder in a business to secure that deal in the 3 months. So if you take a window of 3 months, like
Mm.
what are you guys doing to provide value throughout the sales cycle? What have you found that works?
Um, yeah, so we firstly, just to take a step back, actually, in terms of what I was saying about re-qualifying.
Hmm.
In order to add value, you have to understand where the pain almost lies. So that's the first
Mm,
part: is what have we missed? Um, and we tend to use case studies a lot. So customers of similar size, because we're in the kind of prop tech world, they might have a distributed team in similar countries. So giving them some confidence in what's been done before, is really useful. We've got a really good marketing team, so looking at like content. So it might be an event that we've put on, it might be a piece of research we've done, kind of speaking to specific personas that we want to target, and being able to use that data, like, hey, 60% of HR professionals are worried about their ability to maintain company culture in a more remote working world. Here's what Hubble has done. So you can start to add value to individual stakeholders. We do it through Trumpet, which is a really cool buyer enablement tool. Um,
yeah.
it's super interactive, so you can have all of your stakeholders with eyes on a Trumpet pod, and you can add value to each and every one. You can tag them like, "Hey, John, what's your thoughts on this?" Right. So that's a really good way, and it also means that people tend to discuss the challenges there live. Um, and then the third thing for like the really big businesses, is if you've got a really long ramp period, right? Say you're going through procurement and your champion has been waxing lyrical about the product and they can't wait to
Mm,
give it to their team, but they're waiting for X, Y, and Z to be done.
right.
Piloting, right? Like if you really feel
Mm,
confident in a deal, why don't you offer something for free? And the real benefit is, firstly, feedback. Clients
mm,
feel if you give somebody a pilot for free and you ask them how we can make it better for them, you're probably going to get some good feedback. Like it's like the
mm.
internet, right? If you go to the internet and you look at reviews, normally they're just bad because people want to get on the internet to complain. Whereas if you're giving somebody something for free and asking them for feedback on how to improve it for them for when they're actually paying for it, it's
Yeah.
it's really powerful. So yeah, I'd say those are the three things: case studies, pilots, and kind of good content pieces.
Absolutely, mate. Love that. You even got me thinking about how could I do pilots and recruitment, but I guess we already do it anyway in terms of like, no one pays anything until we find the right candidate. But that's besides the podcast. But yeah, user case is great. People want to see it's tried and tested. And I guess it's matching up similar size companies or similar companies with, similar structure internally, and saying, hey, these guys have done it, similar to you, like you can do it too.
Mm.
And then the marketing team, yeah, absolutely. Content pieces. I find that content's very much a visibility piece. Like, how do we how do we make it visible in front of so many more people? Um, have you ever, and I'm not too sure about Trumpet, because I know of it, but I've not used it. But do they do any like gamification internally? You know?
Um, that's a good question. Not that I know of. I can't say that
Mm.
I know every nook and cranny of it, but the good thing is they're really quick on feedback, so they're probably
Right.
releasing it tomorrow if they saw this.
Yeah. No, I think it's like, and what's going through my head is, if you look at games as a whole, right? The reason why games is so massive is because it grabs the attention,
Yeah.
right? And people are hooked into it. And we're in the world right now of grabbing people's attention, making sure, yes, we're providing value, yes, we're providing case studies and market and content pieces and all that stuff, which is great. But
Mm.
if they could design something where they go through a bit of a game to understand more information, it could be a questionnaire, I don't know. It could be, you know, um, you know, maybe those old fairground where you shoot the duck and you like it goes ping ping ping. Like, you could do that online, and it'd be like every time they knock one down with their mouse, whatever, then information comes up. Did you know? Da, 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 da. And I guess you could segment it into company size, whatever. But all in all, the reason why I'm saying that is data is king, right? Because it all feeds back to then you providing, I guess, the right content and marketing to them that will resonate with them based on pain points. And
Yeah.
you can only really get that from data, from information that you're getting from companies or people that you're speaking to.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it'd be interesting. I might take a look at Trumpet and see if they do anything like
You
that.
might, you might be onto something. Why don't you make
Yeah.
I don't know, competitor cello? Does the
Cello, that's
same
it.
thing
That's it.
with game
That's it.
device.
Yeah. The viola, the world's smallest viola, playing music just for you. Um, what's the feedback like on pilots then? Because I'm sure people are listening to this and they may not run pilots. I think it's a great idea.
Hmm.
Um, like, how's the response been from? Have you seen like a more uptake in people securing deals based off pilots versus like no pilots and just coming in and buying?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, for some buyers, right, it won't be their first rodeo, i.e., it might be a piece of software that their business already has. It's just another competitor. But for us, we were building something pretty much brand new in the Hubble
Mm,
part. So it was very, very hard to give buyers that confidence in, you know, is this going to work? Is this going to be right for our business? So from that standpoint, that's why the pilot was so effective in comparison to maybe just going straight from demo to signing up.
mm,
Because as soon as somebody's paying for something and it doesn't necessarily do what they thought it would or what they expected it to, you're going to churn really quickly. Whereas it's a lot harder for a business that's got something for free, been able to roll that out across their team, get feedback with very minimal risk. It's a lot easier then for us then to turn around and say, look, we want to stay, but in order to do that, we would like this functionality or this feature. Um,
mm,
and that's how you get really really good early adopters that scale with you, because
mm.
they're the ones that know that you're willing to actually put the work in as well to build a product that is suitable for them as a business.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's. Do you find it has the adverse effect? Like, if they pilot it, and I, I guess not necessarily adverse. I think it's probably a good thing if they pilot it, don't like it, then you're not going to churn because that person could have bought it, and then you're having to deal with all this time of churning and stuff like that after it. So it's a good way to weed out, I guess, people that it's not quite right for.
Yeah, and it just keeps you honest. Like,
Mm,
one thing that's really important for any business is like that cross-functional relationship, right? So as a commercial team, we feed back to a product team on what we're hearing from the market. They may be speaking to marketing, who have done like research, spoken to customers who aren't yet using the product, and they think we should build something else. And it's really important that there's a level of cohesion there, so that you're putting out the right product and the right features. I don't necessarily think there's an adverse effect, because I think it keeps you really honest. You know, if people drop, do you have a good enough product? If they churn and they weren't paying for anything, is it really what you think it is? If it's not, you go back to drawing board. Because as soon as you go to market with something that's half baked, it becomes really easy to replicate and improve, and then your defensibility is gone. You're already playing catch up because somebody else has learned from your mistakes.
Which makes sense, and I think that's from an internal perspective of multiple teams. If anyone's listening to this that has multiple teams, that open communication between product design, development, and the sales and marketing of data coming through to then be able to pivot or change or look at different directions. I mean, we when I was at Hawkso, we were running a personal brand academy, and really good in terms of it was live training, but we had to pivot a few times based on just feedback, like how are people finding it? Is the sessions too long? Are they too short? Are you getting enough value? Are you overwhelmed? And I think only until like we heard from people using it and what they truly found out, and it can be as simple as a survey, right? After they've finished it, send it out, collect feedback, and maybe incentivize them to do it. Which is great, and I think any core business out there that's potentially not doing that, do it. So 3 main things, great. Users, case studies, marketing team content pieces, using stuff like Trumpet. I think that's great. It centralizes everything. Because I'd imagine if you've got 5 stakeholders that make a decision and you're trying to email everybody, and it can be quite chaotic. So I want to revert that back to then sales cycle taking longer than ever. So even if it's 3 months, though, if you understand, okay, this is how we provide value, do you have like a process between start and finish that you're providing value to them along the way? Or is it segmented? Is it only when they engage with Trumpet? Like, how does that look like as a blueprint for you of where you position those value to the prospect?
I think so. We like to be very customer led, in the sense of we want to just make it easier for them to buy, right? That's literally our job. So filling out conversations or elongating emails to put value pieces in there almost just becomes puff pieces, right? Extra fluff. We add value to kind of smoothen out any issues. And that's about ultimately enabling a champion, right? So champion says, I've got 5 stakeholders. One in particular has this to say. Like you said, you got 4 people, you got 4 people that are good to go, but one says no. Okay, that's fine. How can we help you? How can we enable you to smooth out that issue? What is the main pain point for that person in this process? What are they aiming to achieve? In what time frame, for example? Okay, cool. This is what I would show them. So it's really about providing it as and when needed. If you've got a champion that's really good and open and honest, then you can do that. If you've got one that perhaps is a bit afraid to pitch internally, it becomes so much harder, because they're just saying, I'm waiting on something. You don't know what. And you can fall into the trap of, oh, well, hey, maybe have a look at this. You kind of start chasing the deal, and it's better to qualify out than to kind of chase and spend time desperately trying to keep it alive when there's nothing there.
Yeah. Oh, mate, the amount of times I've been in that position is unreal. and then inevitably you get ghosted, you're chasing, it doesn't and if you're talking to your bosses and whatever, and you try to forecast and stuff like, yeah, I've got loads of these deals in the pipeline, but inevitably, if you're not in control of it or speaking to the right people, champions is an interesting one. So I've not really done it from a recruitment perspective. We've done it from like selling at Hoxo.
Yeah.
But we were our ICP was very much the owner, the director of the business, depending on the size of the business, really.
Mm.
But like from your side, then, how do you get in front of a champion? Because I imagine SDRs or account execs that are listening to this now they've got their ICP, whether it's enterprise, mid market, whatever, and they're going out and they've got, say, it's CMO, and they're just going direct to that person. So how have you found finding a champion in a
Yeah.
business to then help you identify the main stakeholders, to then, I guess, get the deal rolling?
Yeah, I think a common mistake is to kind of go for the C level, right? To go for the head honcho, the first person that comes to mind for a lot of people. But often they are a step to maybe even three from where the real challenge and the real problem lies. And your champion has to be somebody that feels it, right? They have to be somebody that's willing to really push hard. And then it's your job as a salesperson to help them build a business case internally for it. So, let's say, so in our example for the Hubble Pass, we are looking at CFOs are normally the buy, the kind of economic buyer, but our champions are HR or the head of operations, right? That sort of person who's tasked with making sure workforce is happy, good employee engagement. That's when they get their 6-month review. Though that's what their OKRs are based on.
Yeah.
How can we identify their problems? How can we help them put that into a business case for a CFO to say, on the financial side, we can cut costs? How can they put it in front of a COO to say, look, our more engaged workforce increases productivity? And that's what's really key. You don't always have to go for the most senior person. It's the person that's close to the pain on a day-to-day basis who can really really explain and understand, and also show more senior people within the business how that is having an adverse effect.
Yeah, I love that, because even from a psychological point of view, right? We all do it. We all go after the C level, the decision maker. We want to get in front of them, but notoriously they're busy. They've got a million other things. You're like way down on the pecking order of their list. So having that champion is good from a couple of points of view, right? Yes, the pain point, they feel it, but potentially they don't have the purse strings to make that decision. So having someone internally fighting for you and trying to orchestrate it comes from a trust perspective, because you look two sides, right? You got me going after the CMO, or an SDR going after the CMO, try to get in front of them, providing value, sending value props, sending all this stuff across, and they don't even know if that pain point is the pain point that they're feeling. So having a champion, they're going to listen to someone internally that they know and trust and work with, right? You can probably get much more of a response, or even something down on paper or in your diary, if you've got someone internally, because the amount of times that even at Hoxo, I had like a few senior recruiters that really wanted to do personal branding. They could see the value in it. They could see that, but I couldn't get, for the love of me, like I couldn't get in front of the MD. I was just like, come on, bro. So then he just set up a meeting with them, and I ended up closing the deal. So it does work. But that then coupled with, I guess, your case studies, your marketing, your content piece, the pilots, having something centralized like Trumpet, providing value along the way. Do you find then there's a difference between having a champion on board with you, closing that deal alongside you because they want it, they need it, as opposed to like just getting a meeting in with a CMO and then trying to close that deal, or CFO, sorry?
Yeah, I would go as far to say that for me personally, if you don't have a champion, it's like you can get those sales, right? You can,
Mm,
they're out there, they're possible, but I just think 9 times out of 10, they're not they're not going to close.
mm,
And people may disagree, but the reason being as well is it's also about time, right? The higher up you go, the less time people have for you.
right.
And if you truly want to understand the business's challenges and pain points, and you want to sell value to them, you do need time.
Mm,
Um, Now, you might be able to buy that time with an amazing email into an economic buyer or the key decision maker in the business, to the point where they're like, do you know what, that nailed it. Let's have a
mm,
conversation. But more often than not, their job as a CFO or whoever is to take information from those below and make strategic decisions based off of it, right? If you can put a champion
mm,
in a position as well, like this is a career, this is beneficial for their career, right? If you can put
mm,
them in a position to educate those above them and keep it really clear and keep clean and concise, you're just so much more likely to win that deal.
mm.
Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, in short, it is doable, but I just see a massive, massive benefit of having somebody who has um, a mutual understanding and investment in this purchase as you
yeah,
do.
yeah. That comes from knowing your ICP, knowing the different key players within it, which is you're getting me thinking now. I'm like, crap, I haven't been doing this. I've been going straight in for the the head of the VP. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, you
so
don't want to go too low as well, right? You don't want to go
yeah,
too the person that's never going to say boo to a goose, and you just yeah, you're just spamming them with emails in the hope that they might grow a pair one day and
yeah,
raise an issue. But
that's
yeah,
it.
fine
Just
balance.
just just contact DPD or one of these delivery when they're delivering stuff to the office. Yeah, go into the CFO's office, just put this on his desk. That's not a champion. Imagine that. There's a strategy for you. But I imagine it's yeah. I imagine it's doing both though. Like you don't want to. I don't want people to take this away. Like drop what you're doing and just focus on champions. I think it's being strategic and it's being um I guess doing both because if you do have that champion and the CFO or whoever your ICP is
Mm,
knows your name or at least saw your name, then there's going to be some sort of relevance there or um, recognition that they've saw you before. So good. Okay, I love that. Loads of advice there. People can definitely take away and potentially think about the go-to-market strategy and how they're utilizing some marketing content pilot, even a pilot or specific tools like Trumpet
mm,
and then if you're not having a champion in the your ICP and the companies you want to work with, then maybe it's something to investigate and see how you go about doing that. But you mentioned at the start of the podcast there was two areas. There was obviously the sales cycle and the education around how do you provide value with that
mm.
throughout. But you also mentioned price sensitivity. So let's dive into that. So like why is that such a big problem for you right now?
Um, So do you know what? It's a blessing and a curse, right? If you look at any business, the second biggest outlay for them financially is office space
Mm,
after their employees, and it's an area that because of the way the world of work is changing, there's massive pressure for companies to cut costs
mm,
because empty desk syndrome. On average, 33% of desks are actually used in any given office.
wow.
Um, Now, because the product we're selling is so new,
Mm,
people's level of expectation on what their workplace strategy should look like, what a budget should look like for that, they don't really have an expectation. They just want to go as cheap as possible. So we're just finding at the moment that, especially because of this macroeconomic climate, companies are shopping around a bit more to see, just in case, whether they can get a cheaper solution. That in turn elongates the sales cycle because they're speaking to multiple people across multiple businesses. Um,
Mm,
yeah, I mean, I think price is always going to be a tough thing. We're fortunate that we're in a market people do need somewhere to work from, even if
mm,
that's at home. They probably want to get out and about every so often. So we're selling a cost saving solution, but at the same time, there's no grasp of what the world of work should look like and what people's budgets should look like. So there's a big educational piece that we have to go
mm.
through first in order to build confidence. When you're aiming at enterprise level customers and there's not a huge amount of confidence around the budget and the expected cost, it's very, very difficult to sell into those businesses. So it's something we're slowly but surely getting to grips with.
Yeah, and I think every company is going to be different, right? They're going to have different needs. If it's hybrid working, fully in the office, or one day. I work with some clients that's one day in the office a month,
Mm.
to fully remote, to like 3 days in the office, 2 days from home. So yeah, I guess, and that comes back to what you were saying, is understand the customer, and potentially their pain points and what their they need for a workforce. But are you finding that most people are just hybrid now? Or are you finding more of a direction people are going 5 days of work, 5 days a week in work in the office?
So we actually had an event last week, which was really good. We
Mm,
It's a strange one. Um,
mm,
Tuesdays and Thursdays are really popular. That's standard. Um, we've recently launched a new part-time office product, and we're seeing a lot of companies going in on Mondays and Fridays, which we didn't expect. But two to
okay.
3 days a week tends to be the most popular on average.
Mm,
Whether those are enforced by the company, by the business or not, again, that really varies. You look at a lot of
mm,
commercial teams, maybe they just want to be around each other for the kind of vibe, the camaraderie, but the company doesn't
mm,
mandate that. Whereas other businesses, they're spending money in office that they've maybe signed for 3, 5 years, and
yeah,
they have to mandate at least 2 days a week, or they feel they have to make it worthwhile. They're getting
yeah,
something their money's worth. Uh, I think there's a slight shift of power because of the job market and the macroeconomic climate moving slowly towards employers and away from employees, being able to say
okay.
in the office X number of days a week. But on the flip side, businesses, there's also like a war for talent, right? And the
Mm,
businesses that are winning that are the ones that are offering flexibility.
yeah,
At the event, there's a gentleman called Akbar, really, really cool guy, really intelligent. He was saying that businesses that offer more flexibility are actually cheaper to hire for because you've got a much bigger workforce to go at. The businesses that want 4 or 5 days in a week in the office, they're going to pay more for their hiring costs because
yeah,
recruiters have to work harder. So yeah, it's a real mixed bunch. The real answer is there's no right way to do it. Right?
yeah.
The head of people tech from Bolt, gentleman called Andy Turnbull was there, and they have 2 days a week. They've got a
Mm,
like, massive hub, and that works really well for them as a business. On the flip side, a lady called Flo from Primer, they're a fully remote business. Right, everybody's remote.
wow.
So,
Mm,
and they're both super successful companies. So there's no right
yeah.
around it. But and I'm not sure anybody will ever find the perfect, the silver bullet, simply because people's preferences will change.
Mm,
Employees will maybe start to like to go in more, or vice
yeah.
versa.
Yeah, and if they've got that option to go in more, great. Having that flexibility, and I think you're absolutely right. For people that are hiring right now and need people 5 days in the office, you're literally cutting your the resource in half of the people that you can get, for sure, right? 'Cause people do want hybrid. If you did, or people do, yeah, people do want hybrid or remote at least. They you've got a much wider pool of finding people, or even around the UK. Like
Yeah.
I've got a company that now one day in the office, they're on the south coast of England, but they've got people in Manchester, Bristol, Wales, London, everywhere, and the pool is just so much more bigger. And they could what they can do is cut down in terms of salary, like not a huge amount, but if you think if someone's going into the office 5 days a week or even four,
Yeah.
like the cost aspect of them going into the office is huge,
Mm.
right? Especially with train fares going up and strikes and all that sort of stuff. Whereas if you have like even remote or a couple of days in the office a week, like you're going to save a lot more money, potentially in salary, and have a much wider pool to go after. So good. I think it's for the future. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out in terms of what people do. I think hybrid's here for forever. I don't think we're ever going to go back to 5 days a week. And I think if people are, like I said before, they're just going to run into lesser talent pool to employ people that want to work for them.
Yeah, and it's also a generational thing, right? If you look at kind of
Mm,
millennials are at a stage where um, Gen Zs are coming into the workforce now.
yeah,
Millennials are having kids and so on and so forth. Childcare is expensive. So your point to salaries is right. If you want to hire a millennial who's got two kids and is used to working kind of remote, all of a sudden they're paying for childcare. It's not cheap.
no,
And with Gen Zs coming in now, I feel like it's a whole different kind of can of worms that's being opened. So it'll be
yeah,
interesting to see where it goes. It's fun to be a part of it because you just know that
yeah,
at any given moment something could change. Somebody might find the perfect solution, and then.
yeah.
But yeah, no, it's an interesting topic, that's for sure.
Hopefully inflation doesn't keep going because then salaries keep going up. But that's good news for me anyway. Anyway, that's a story for another time. Listen, I think absolutely wicked. Loads of advice there people can take away. So just a few questions just to wrap it all up. You've been in sales for quite some time. So throughout your career, like what would you say is the biggest highlight of your sales career so far?
Um,
And don't say this is a podcast.
yeah, it's definitely the podcast.
Definitely the podcast.
Do you know what? I won't necessarily talk about like a specific deal.
Mhm.
I think from a personal perspective, it's seeing the shift in people's perception of sales and the ability for different personalities to enter sales.
Mm,
I've come across and worked with some really, really like some amazing people who weren't your type A stereotypical salesperson, but they were
mm,
excellent at the job. Um, so that's my biggest highlight is seeing an industry kind of really open up to all sorts of different personalities
yeah.
and or being able to work with them. And also that pushes development in how people sell, right?
Yeah.
It changes buyers' traits also. They might realize, oh, I actually like being sold to like that. So it
Mm.
kind of expands people's skill sets and different avenues in which you can take. So probably not your standard answer. I've done some pretty cool deals, but yeah, that's what I would say.
I think you're right. Yeah, because like you look at the days of Glengarry, Glen Ross, where it's like ABC always be closed and coffees for closers and all that stuff. I'm on my 10th one today, so don't worry. But yeah, I think your typical people that are just going out cold calling. I think it still works, yeah, to an extent, but I think there's a much larger piece with marketing and data that you can really feed into to help the right people come into your funnel
Yeah,
so that it actually helps the deal get closed rather than just I guess scattergun approach, trying to ring everyone just to try and drum up some leads. I
yeah.
don't think that necessarily works in today's age, but yeah, awesome, mate. We'll chat about those deals off there. Just last question then. For anyone listening, if they want to reach out to you, Che, if you just want to plug in Hubble, what you guys do, if you're hiring, or if people want to reach out to you, how should they contact you?
Yeah, of course. So firstly, hubblehq.com. We are an incredible prop tech platform, whether you need full-time office, part-time office, whether you just want a kind of hot desk from here or there or everywhere. We're in, multiple countries. Um, in terms of myself, if you want to get in touch, my email is che@hubblehq.com. If recruiters would kindly not spam me, that'd be great. We're
That's
not.
my job. That's my job.
Leave that to Aaron, please. But no, yeah, that, and look, I'm more than happy to kind of have conversations. One thing I would say is I've worked with mentors, and it's really beneficial. Not saying I'm going to be the world's best mentor, but if anybody ever wants to kind of bounce ideas off me, more than happy to have that conversation, or just find me on LinkedIn.
Nice. Good. Awesome. Well, we'll leave it there. Cheers so much for your time. Been absolutely wicked. I'm glad having you on the show. And that will be us for today. Cheers, Jay.
Cool. Cheers, Aaron. Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good one, mate. What an episode there with Jay. Absolutely loved that. Huge amount of value to really sit there and think, okay, if we've got a long sales cycle, how do we provide value throughout? So he unpacked, he's obviously went from 4 to 6 week sales cycle to now 3 months. Okay, so making sure your SDRs and account execs know how to provide value throughout the sales cycle. Super, super important. So we talked about, yes, user cases, which we all know super important, but then working with your marketing team, looking at content pieces that provide the right pain points, and using tools like Trumpet that can really centralize, where if you've got multiple stakeholders in your prospects, that they can all go and comment and add on, which allows you to get a lot of data and feedback into what you're actually doing. Talked about pilots. If you've got a product or a SaaS product right now that you're just going straight in and people need to buy it, potentially you could look at piloting for a month, a week, whatever it may be, to really see, so they can see the true value of actually using and buying your service. So super, super important. Lastly, you talked about like having a champion, which I never really thought much about, but it makes so much sense. Rather than just always constantly going for the C-level people, how can you find a champion that is close to the pain point or has the real need, that can be internal of that business and really fight for you? And from a psychology point of view, that like this, the decision maker, the CFO, CMO, whoever it is, they're going to listen to people internally because they need that information, that data, so they can make educated decisions on the strategy and direction of the business. So super, super important. So if you haven't got champions, I would advise potentially taking a step back and looking at how can you get champions to really advocate your business and what you guys do. So without further ado, that is the end of the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I will see you all on the next one.